Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is J.R. Moore coming to you live from deep in the mountains of the Missouri Ozarks on Friday, the second day of March, year of our Lord 2018. Welcome to the John Moore Show. Breaking news, the Department of Justice is looking into the actions of Oakland, California Mayor Libby Schaaf. Her actions where she warned the illegal aliens that the federal government was coming to look for them, to arrest them and deport them. Obviously, clearly presenting a danger to the agents in charge of making these arrests and also a danger to the community by protecting these illegal aliens from being found out and deported. Proper tip of the day. I want to encourage all of you to check your stock of batteries. Make sure you check the expiration dates, check the condition of the batteries, and check the quantity. Make sure you got enough. You can't have too many batteries, quite frankly. So that's your proper tip of the day. We were hoping that Tom Berryhill would call. If he does, we will bring him on board, and we're going to talk about emergency survival communications. Second hour, we will have open lines, and Dr. Myers is taking a much-deserved vacation. In fact, I don't recall. Well, I guess during the holidays he may have taken off, but I talked to Dr. Myers this morning and wished him well and told him I expect him to be back next week, rested, tanned, and ready to do some radio. It looks like we do have with us now my friend Tom Berryhill. Tom is a gentleman who began more than half a century ago to become a ham radio operator, which he did become more than half a century ago. He went on to have a career involving electronics, radio frequency engineering, related matters. And we're going to talk this morning about emergency survival communications. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning. How are you today?
Hanging in there, sir. We got a sunny day, late winter. Maybe early to call it spring, but it's a beautiful day. How about yourself?
Same here, John. Yeah, nice and sunny, beautiful. Weather's been great.
Well, tomorrow morning we will be in Viburnum, Missouri, you and I, and anybody who wants to show up, we're going to have a ham radio class at the Quad County Fire District meeting room, which is on Highway 49 in Viburnum, Missouri, right next to the firehouse. Which is not right next to on Highway 49, next to the ready mix plant. The ready mix plant is a pretty high-profile landmark, isn't it, Tom?
Yeah, it really is. Isn't that where they have one of their repeater systems? Isn't that where that tower is?
Yes, there's a water tank there, and we've got a ham repeater at the base of it, and the antenna on top of it. We do, in fact, have that. The little building looks like it's about the size of a telephone booth, and for those of you who are under age 40, a telephone booth is a little structure that would have a telephone in it where you can make a telephone call, which are kind of hard to find these days, aren't they, Tom?
Yeah, they don't have those too much anymore. I'm trying to think of the last phone booth. I think there's one in the county here.
There's one in Steelville, right on it would be the northwest corner of the courthouse property. And tourists like to have their photograph taken in front of the telephone booth because they're such a rare item these days. It's kind of funny, publicly, the telephone companies were saying 20 years ago that they were getting rid of the telephone, the pay telephones, so that they could cut back on the drug trade. That's what they were saying publicly. Do you recall that?
I don't remember them saying that, John, but it sounds typical of.
Well, that's a bunch of silliness because if you're selling drugs, you've obviously got enough money for a cell phone. So.
Well, I would think the drug dealers just go to the nearest store and buy a prepaid cell phone, use that for a while, and throw it away and get another one.
We call them burner phones. Yeah.
Well, there you go.
But so that's a part of Americana that is slipping away from us, and in fact, one of the older wood telephone booths is going to bring a pretty good price on eBay. I would think. I haven't looked one up, but I would suspect probably $500 plus for one that's in excellent condition. Well, Tom, at the ham radio class tomorrow, we'll be starting from the beginning, won't we?
Yeah, I think so. I didn't know exactly what the agenda would be. I knew you said it was a new club, so I don't know.
Well, we'll get to the club part later in the class, but any class like this, the only assumption going into it is that the people sitting there don't have a clue about two-way radio, ham radio, or communications in general. So it's going to be a spectrum. There'll be people there who won't have a clue about what a radio is or how it works, and there'll be experienced people there as well who've had possibly decades of experience. But we have to cater to the lowest common denominator, don't we, Tom?
Mm-hmm. That's true. Yes.
So
we'll talk about the basics, I suppose, and start from ground zero and go on from there.
Absolutely. In addition, we'll have fresh hot coffee, fresh warm pastries, and free Bibles. Anybody that wants a free Bible, there will be free Bibles there as well. So it's kind of it's a social event as much as anything else, isn't it, Tom?
Oh yeah, you have a pretty good group, John, that shows up. I have always enjoyed meeting with all those people. Yes.
Well, they are good people, and they're range in age from people in there'll be teenagers there. There'll be a couple of youngsters there, I think, in their early adolescence, around 13, 14 years old, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 in that age range, up to, I know one gentleman who'll be there is pushing 80 years old. You know Ron. In fact, Ron might be listening. Good morning, Ron, if you're listening. So it's a wide range of age, sex, world experience, level of expertise or lack thereof in ham radio. But we all get together to learn together, and it will, in fact, be the first meeting, the inaugural meeting of our new ham radio club for our area. I don't know how many licensed hams will be there besides myself and you. I've invited all the ones I'm aware of. And I know one gentleman says he can't make it, and another one who set up that repeater. I believe he'll be there, but I'm not positive. Regardless of who's there, we will get together. We'll learn about emergency communications and establish our new ham radio club, won't we, Tom?
That's right. Looking forward to it, John. I'll bring a whiteboard along so we can draw diagrams, and that always helps with the discussion.
It does. It does. The class starts at 9 o'clock. We'll be done by noon, and it'll be a fun full day, for a half a day, I should say, for the people that show up. It's nice to get together with people who understand what we understand and know what we know. I know one gentleman, Ron, I was talking about earlier, one of the main reasons he comes is because if he travels an hour to get to this meeting, he gets to be around people who knows what he knows, and he can talk to them, and they won't think he's crazy because they understand and know the same thing he does. And that's a big deal, isn't it, Tom?
Oh, yeah, it's always good to be around like-minded friends and associates. Yeah, John, you're not always... the topics that we talk about aren't always readily accepted in most crowds.
That's true. That's true. So it it just adds to the desirability of being there in the first place. We've had people travel as far as from Kentucky to be in these classes, Tom, and people come from Rolla, Missouri area, and we have a pretty big draw. Most people are from within a 20-mile radius of Viburnum, but we do draw from a pretty large area. One couple comes down from the Cuba area. I know that's right at a 1-hour drive from Cuba. It wouldn't be an hour except for these roads. Many of these roads, if you drive more than 45 miles an hour, you're taking your life in your hands, aren't you?
Oh, yeah. And, especially traveling early in the morning, you have to watch out for the deer. That's when they start running across the road. I almost had a accident with one of those just a couple of days ago. So
Actually, early in the mornings when they're wrapping it up. Deer are nocturnal animals. So
Yeah.
early in the mornings when they're wrapping up their night of searching for food and doing whatever deer do at night. But yes, of course, the deer situation isn't nearly as bad in March as it is in around November when they're having their mating season. That's when they get a little bit crazy. Um, we'll start out with the basics with ham radio. What ham radio is, how it came into being, what you need to, and we'll get to the basics of how to start studying to get your ham radio license. It's a small percentage of people out of the general population. It's less than 1% of the adults in this country have a ham radio license, don't they, Tom?
Yeah, I don't know the exact numbers, John. There's websites online that publish all that, and then the FCC's website, of course, has the listings for every licensed ham operator in the country. So. Yeah, the information's out there. I think it's less than 1 million, but I think it's maybe around 700,000 to 800,000, something like that.
Well, that would make us the ham radio operators about 1/4 of 1% of the American population. So that's so out of every 400 people in this country, there may be one licensed ham radio operator.
Sounds about right.
That's about right. So it's a tiny percentage of men and women, and boys and girls too. We shouldn't leave out the boys and girls. We routinely have 8-year-old boys and girls, 9 and 10-year-old boys and girls passing their ham radio license test, don't we?
That's very true. And in recent years, the requirements have been reduced, and it's much easier to get started. Way back when I got into it, John, we had to learn Morse code, and we had to have the technical requirements were a lot more stringent. And the reason for that is the equipment had to be adjusted just right, or you might interfere with other radio services that were on adjacent frequencies and so on. So you had to be very careful, and the FCC had to be sure that the ham radio operators understood how to adjust their transmitters for proper operation. And nowadays, the equipment is so
it's gone digital.
Complete.
It's gone digital.
It's you don't have to make all these transmitter adjustments. Everything is pretty much automatic inside the radio itself, and it's just taken a lot of the guesswork out of it. Some of the things we had to do in the old days, if you bring that up now, if you talk about that to the ham operators of today that are just getting started, they don't have a clue as to what you're talking about, because that's basically old technology. It still comes into play a little bit, but it's something that you can learn as you go. But to get started, you really don't have to be an expert at any of this. And I really think anybody that would really study the information that's required, and by the way, all this test information is online. You can see the actual test questions. There's various groups of questions that are on websites and available to study and look at, and all kinds of study guides are also available that uses those questions, and it's not. Doesn't take too much effort. I really think if somebody studied for a couple of weeks, a little bit each evening for a couple of weeks, they could easily pass that test.
Right. Well, beginning a week from today, we'll have a ham radio study group at the American Legion in Davisville, beginning at 6 p.m., going until 7 p.m. That's the hour before movie night starts. We're hoping to get, if we get 3 or 4 people, that would be a nice sized group for where we are, to take an hour. These are people coming to movie night anyway, so they're not doing anything they weren't already doing. Just show up 1 hour early and spend an hour studying both the questions and the answers. What we wish we would have had in high school all those years ago was the questions and the answers, which certainly gives you a leg up, doesn't it, Tom?
Well, it really does. It's a multiple choice test, and there's I really don't know how many, John, maybe 4 or 5 different groups of questions that are used for these FCC tests, and all these tests are administered by volunteer examiners. There'll be a group of volunteer examiners that give the test, and it's usually the testing takes place at a radio club. It's a pretty informal setting, and anybody that wants to take that test will find it rather comfortable. They may be nervous a little bit, but it's not like the old days when we had to go to the big city and go to the federal building, and FCC examiners were there. No smiles or anything. It was
serious stuff.
Oh,
serious stuff. Yeah.
Some of these FCC examiners were really something.
Well,
but no, it's
took
much
them
more
upset,
relaxed.
Yeah.
It's more relaxed, and it's if somebody just puts a little bit of effort into it and studies for a couple of weeks and really gives it their full attention, they'll pass that test. It's not that hard.
Well, one of my neighbors out here, a friend of mine, he decided he wanted to become a ham radio operator. He sat down one evening and took all the ham radio tests in one night and passed all of them in one night.
Well, it's possible to do that. John, I haven't taken an FCC test in many. It's been close to about 45 years, something like that was the last test I took, and that was for the commercial license, which we needed to work on two-way radio equipment and broadcast equipment and so on. But believe it or not, I'm actually thinking about taking one more test, and that is the radio telegraph. There, it's almost like getting a buggy whip license. They don't really have a need for it anymore, but they still offer the license, and I'm thinking about getting it because there's only about 100 people in the country that have it.
Hold that thought. We've got a break. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. It's taken 3 years before I could offer the intershelter domes for sale. During those 3 years, several different governments and militaries were taking all their production. The intershelter dome homes may be just what you've been looking for to provide affordable, energy-efficient, permanent, and attractive housing. These dome homes are prefabricated units that can be assembled in a few hours by 2 men with a ladder and simple hand tools. Check out the photos of these dome homes built in the Arctic, on tropical beaches, in suburban areas, and in forests. All the details, many photographs, and the pricing of the dome homes are listed on the left-hand side of my homepage at thelibertyman.com. I think you'll find these homes are not only attractive, but they're energy efficient, and a bonus. You can disassemble them and reassemble them as many times as you feel you need to. Pretty great, huh? Something that's very, very unique. Check them out at my website at the All right, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. J.R. Moore here on Friday, the 2nd of March. My website is thelibertyman.com. If you plan on going to Dallas, I will be the keynote speaker at the Hear the Watchman Conference in Dallas, March 22nd and 25th. My keynote address will be at the luncheon on Saturday, March 24th. If you do plan on going, click on the banner at my website to get the promotion code to get $20 off the admission price. If you can't go and want to participate by live streaming, there is a 20% off discount code for that also. Visiting with Tom Berryhill, we're talking about emergency survival communications. Tom, we got our first caller here. We got Dave in Texas. Good morning, Dave.
Good morning, John and Tom. Last week, you guys were talking about the noise-canceling headsets, and I called in concerning one that I have that has a headphone jack on it, so you can plug in your radio. And I finally got around, John, to emailing you the information on that. So it's probably in your email right now. I'll let you know what it is for anybody who's listening, if you're ready.
Yeah, why don't you tell everybody? Let's hear it.
Okay, its brand name is Howard Light, Leight. A pretty popular brand name. And the model is called Impact Sport.
Okay.
And they've got them on Amazon for like $35.
Can't beat that. Can't beat that.
And here's my question for Tom. Let's say the stuff hits the fan overnight or whenever, and pretty much all radio is out, all normal standard radio, TV, things like that. Where would you go? What frequencies would you start listening to figure out what's going on? Let's say there's some sort of an EMP attack or something. Do you have a handful of frequencies that you'd recommend that people can tune into to start picking up what's going on around the world?
Okay, well, first of all, I would look to see what type of local activities going on. I would get on the 2-meter band, and I would listen. If there's any local repeaters, I'd check those first, and maybe one of the direct frequencies, simplex frequencies such as 146.52, I'd listen there. I'd look at those frequencies first to hear if there's any local activity and what they're discussing and what they know about what's going on. Then I would go right to the HF frequencies, and I would, depending on the time of day, if it was during the daylight hours, I would tune around 7.25, well, between 7.2 and 7.3 megahertz. That's the top end of the 40-meter band. And there are some emergency networks in those areas, in those frequency ranges, that they typically will have drill sessions, and some of them are on the air every day, and just informally, but they have check-ins, and mobile units will call in and just to see how their signal's doing, and there's a little bit of a discussion, and they shut the net down, and then there might just be some informal conversations going on. I would tune into some of those networks first. At nighttime, it would be in the 75-meter band, which is be up around 3.9 to 4 megahertz. In that range, there would be several discussions going on for sure at nighttime, and it wouldn't take much effort to find the one that's getting out the information, and that's exactly what I would do. So, again, during the first thing I would do is look at the local VHF frequencies, the 2-meter band, or the UHF frequencies. If you're in a metropolitan area, some of those are in heavy use there. You would tune into those repeaters or simplex frequencies, and then go to the HF bands. The 40-meter band during the day, and then at nighttime, you would go on the 75-meter band.
Hold that thought, gentlemen. Hold on. We got a break. We'll be right back.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. We're continuing our energy cleaner promotion, which began August of 2016. In this promotion, you get to buy an energy cleaner, $70 off retail, and a mattress pad, 10% off retail. $200 of the purchase price of the energy cleaner goes to Republic Broadcasting. This is a great way to help get energy cleaners out to people who need them and have some financial issues to deal with. And, of course, a great way to support Republic Broadcasting. Here's what you do. Send in a postcard. My address is John Moore, P.O. Box 201, Davidsville, Missouri. We pick a postcard every 2 weeks. If your postcard is drawn, you get the chance to buy the energy cleaner, $70 off retail and 10% off the mattress pads. Put your name and your address, your telephone number, and your email address on the postcard, and we wish you the best of luck. Thank you. All right, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. J.R. Moore here on Friday, the 2nd of March. My website is thelibertyman.com. That's thelibertyman.com. What's new at my website is a consolidation of all the abrupt climate change information into one place. So you don't need to be searching back and forth on my website, which can be a bit burdensome, to say the least. So on the left side of my homepage, just below the Confederate battle flags plural, right next to the Hear the Watchman banner, you'll see the abrupt climate change information all listed there in one handy spot. So that'll help you all get what you need to get to really get yourself up to speed on what's going on with abrupt climate change. Also on my website, of course, you'll find energy cleaners for sale. This is my home business. Energy cleaners are healing devices. We focus on pain mitigation, arthritis pain, joint pain, back pain, doesn't matter, and getting a great night's sleep. Issues that most Americans most of the time have to deal with. If you want to deal with it in a healthy manner, as opposed to dangerous, expensive, harmful pharmaceutical products, well, get yourself an energy cleaner. Keep in mind, I offer a 90-day money-back guarantee, so you're risking nothing when you buy your energy cleaner. You can check out the details right there at my website, the patent application information, the testimonials from people we know like Steve Whitman, and also check out the factory-made fitted mattress pads to go with the energy cleaner. It's a great combination. You'll really love it. Only $285 shipping included to American zip codes. If you need to send a check or a money order, my address is right there at my website. And keep in mind, I take PayPal. PayPal is the most secure way to make any payment online. Toll-free hour line, 24 hours a day. Here it is, 800-592-9543. I say again, 800-592-9543. We are taking your questions, calls, and comments here at Republic Broadcasting. The call number is 800-313-9443. Dave from Texas, did you have any follow-up question or comment, sir?
Yeah, I was wondering if any particular sideband would be appropriate for those frequencies.
Well, on the lower HF frequencies, most of that communication is performed on lower sideband. And then if you were listening to any of the higher frequencies above 40-meter band, you would use upper sideband. Now,
okay.
the only exception to that is the 60-meter channels. That's the only band where there are discrete channels that the ham operators are required to use. So you have to be exactly on that frequency, and then you use upper sideband. And the reason for that is those are shared with government and military users. So those frequencies, the ham operators are operating on a secondary basis. If a government station comes on there and requests that you vacate the frequency, you have to. They have priority. But and that's the reason for upper sideband, because all of that government traffic is always on upper sideband.
Oh, okay. Which brings up the next question. Are there any particular government frequencies that you would recommend listening to, Mount Weather, command post, stuff like that?
Well, you'd have to look online and do some research on your own, Dave. I don't know all the different government frequencies. There would be some. Now, if you want to listen to state agencies, they do. I'm thinking of Missouri here. Every county has an HF system. It's something they started working on probably. Well, I remember seeing some of those put into operation as far back as I'm thinking about 25 years ago. They started working towards this, and they set up a wide range HF system that operated from the 2 megahertz frequencies up through, I think the highest one was around 9 megahertz or 9.5, something like that. But what they're trying to do is set up something for an all-out disaster, like you were mentioning, that maybe the VHF systems weren't working, or they needed better, the telephones were out and they needed better communications back to the state capital and between the various counties. They actually set up HF systems for that, and I know most of them were using Motorola MyComs, which is a very nice piece of equipment, and they would be about the unit itself would be about 125 watts, and then but all of those that I saw licensed were actually authorized to run 1 kilowatt of power, so they could run 1,000 watts. You can go on the FCC website and search those frequency ranges for your particular state, and you'll see any of those systems that are licensed and available to listen to. You wouldn't be able to communicate with them, but you could certainly listen to them. I don't know if any of those are encrypted. I doubt if they are, but they'll certainly, I'm sure in an all-out disaster, they would certainly be put to use. And in your local area, you would have no trouble hearing them.
Well, thank you very much for the information, Tom, and thanks for the great show, John.
Okay, Dave, you're welcome, sir. The call number is 800-313-9443. Well, Tom, it's no leap in logic to say the following, that the information we're putting out today could literally save lives, couldn't it?
Oh, yeah, that's very true. You know, the shortwave equipment, the HF frequencies, and when we say HF, John, we're talking about high frequency communications, which is usually considered anything from 2 megahertz on, or actually above the broadcast band, but around 2 megahertz up to 30 megahertz. That's the entire shortwave spectrum. And I always focus on the lower frequencies because that's where the emergency communications would be taking place for the most part, because so much of it would be regional, and that's what those frequencies will allow coverage on, is the regional areas. So if you wanted to cover it, like in our case, the Midwest, or statewide, or maybe a 250 or 300, 400 mile radius, something like that, that would be the 40 meter band during the day, during daylight hours, and that band works at nighttime too. But the range is greatly increased at nighttime. And then, I
was going to say, Tom, this is the efficiency, the ability of high frequency has been known since before World War II, hasn't it?
Oh yeah. That's where most of the communications took place way back in the day. But nowadays, most of the emergency communications is on the FM two-way radios on VHF and UHF, and because it's used locally. But if you want wide range coverage, it will be the HF systems and networks that will handle the majority of that communications. It's because you don't need a repeater system, you don't need a large infrastructure, even a car battery and a small low-powered radio will give you incredible distances that you'd be able to communicate. So it's something to really pay attention to, and that's why I encourage anybody getting into ham radio, start at the entry level, which will give you some HF capabilities, but mostly VHF, and then as soon as you can, upgrade to the next license class, which would be a general class, and that will help you get on the HF bands and you can talk all over the world.
Absolutely. Well, it's kind of ironic with all the advances in electronics and communications that we still rely on something we've known about since at least the 1930s, maybe earlier.
Oh yeah, it goes way back. I mean, back when wireless communications first started, that was I guess some of it was even going on in the late 1800s, but getting into the early 1900s, it was all on very low frequencies. It was below the AM broadcast band that we have today, so it would be around 500 kilohertz and lower, and most of the radio traffic was in those ranges. And there were no licenses issued. People that wanted to be a ham operator would just get on the air, and most of them just used their initials, or they made up a call sign, but usually it was just their initials. And they would run their equipment, and some of them communicated over great distances. But then once the federal government got involved, I mean, they really did have to, John. I know how some of us feel about those types of intrusions, but they had to because everybody was on the same wavelengths and frequency bands at the same time, and they had crucial maritime traffic that had to be handled, and then there'd be ham operators on those same frequencies trying to talk to their friends, and it was just a lot of interference. So they had to get some structure to this and straighten it all out, and then they had AM broadcasting got started, and they had to regulate that as well. That was very, very critical because they had so much interference with that. So started out with the Federal Radio Commission, FRC, and then it became the Federal Communications Commission when they reorganized all that. And of course, all the Republic Broadcasting listeners know about that. That was in the early 1930s. And then we still have the Communications Act. You'll see it referred to all the time in the FCC information. They'll and print it on your ham radio license. That will mention the Communications Act of 1934 as amended. And there's been many amendments to that to keep up with the times. But that's what all the licensed ham operators and all radio services that are licensed fall under those regulations.
Right. Well, thank goodness it is regulated, because when it was a free-for-all, I can't imagine what it was like when it was a free-for-all, and that's basically what it was prior to regulation, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. And then, on the very low frequencies below the AM broadcast band, in fact, 500 kilohertz was an emergency frequency. And if you were a radio operator on a ship, you had to monitor that at all times. They even had special alarms that would sound throughout the ship if there was any emergency radio traffic coming over that frequency. That was abandoned really wasn't that long ago. It may still be used a little bit, but most of that's been offloaded onto satellite systems and so on. So they shut down the 500 kilohertz as an emergency frequency, and the last transmissions were probably around 10 or 12 years ago, something like that.
Right.
And that's why, and that's one of the main reasons that they finally got rid of the Morse code requirement for becoming a ham radio operator. You see, John, in the old days, becoming a ham operator and learning Morse code and so on provided a very highly trained group of radio operators that could be tapped to for military service and government service and so on in times of need. These men and women, learned Morse code, and they learned excellent communication skills, and then the military could draw from that experience. I would think if anybody got drafted during World War II and they found out that you knew Morse code, you were probably put into a radio operator position pretty quick.
Oh, yes. So those people were, and still, to a certain extent, still are highly sought after. Well, the Morse code, and when you're using it, it's called CW, continuous wave, isn't it?
Yeah, and what that really means is that the transmitter carrier, it's the simplest form of communications, and I would think you could even consider it a very early form of texting. Everybody knows how to text with their phones. I don't do any of that myself, John, but the Morse code was an early form of texting because you sent each letter one at a time, and that's how you did it. And if the higher speeds, it became easy to actually hear the Morse code dots and dashes that would comprise an entire word, and you started to pick the words out. It really for me anyway, became a language. I don't really hear the beeps. I just hear somebody talking, and in the old days we still had what was called a bug, where you could make automatic dashes, automatic dots, but manual dashes, and you still had what was called that was referred to as your fist. That was almost like your what would you call it? Like if you had a dialect of John, help me, I can't think of the word right now.
Well, I'm not sure.
Yeah, well,
but,
what?
But there's an additional thing about shortwave, about continuous wave Morse code. It is still, that type of communication will get through to the other person, other location, better than any other. And so it's one of the oldest forms of communication, and still the most effective, isn't it?
Oh, it really is. And the word I was trying to think of was accent. Your fist was like your accent. So if you heard Jim up in Chicago, his form of sending, you would immediately know it was somebody you were familiar with by the way they sent the Morse code. Nowadays, a lot of it's automated, and it's built. The electronic keys are built into the radios and all that, and they don't make everybody sounds kind of the same, which is helpful in some ways. But yes, it is the most effective way because you can narrow down the bandwidth of the receiver, which allows you to hear much less static and noise, and you can zero in on that signal, and even in very weak signal conditions, you can hear those Morse code elements. The dots and dashes are coming through, and it's just the most effective way for communications. Plus, everything's spelled out, so you can write it down as you're going, and it just makes the communications very effective, although a little bit slower. It's one of the best ways, and that's actually what I focus on, John. I usually use CW, and the reason it's called continuous wave is because you're doing nothing more than turning that transmitter on and off. When the transmitter just puts out a straight carrier, that's called a carrier. When you turn the transmitter on, it just puts out a frequency. And all you're doing is you're turning that frequency on and off with a telegraph key to make those dots and dashes.
Hold that thought, Tom. The call number is 800-313-9443. We'll be right back. All right, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. J.R. Moore here on Friday, the 2nd of March. Tom, we got our last caller this hour. We got Ken in New York. Good morning, Ken.
Morning, J.R. Morning, J.R. Morning, Tom.
Sir.
I'm looking at something here. It's like an all-purpose information website. It's called RadioReference.com. And they have forums. They can answer just about any question you might have about frequency bands, equipment, and it appears to be national. And then you can put in your local area, or I think there's places where you can find out local jurisdictions about what kind of system they're using. I'm not a ham, but I've been in electronics all my life, so I've had scanners, and I had an interest they'll tell you what frequencies are used for what services and such.
Well, that's really helpful information. I've heard of that website, Ken, but it's important to find all this information in advance so that you have your scanner set up. You have maybe a handwritten list of frequencies that would be important to monitor during emergencies. So rather than trying to find all this information under a stressful situation, it's best to put it all together while you have the time and things are relatively quiet. So now's the time to get that information, and that's some good. That's a good website that you mentioned.
I'm curious about something. I understand that some of the when I say that some of the police services are going digital now, I thought that these transmissions were supposed to be open and that they would not be encrypted. Has something changed in the law that you're aware of?
I don't know. I honestly don't know the exact law on that, but a lot of it is encrypted. Some of it isn't. Some of it's still analog. The fire departments seem to be still going with analog equipment. What do you think, John?
Well, ham radio cannot be encrypted by law. Maybe that's what Ken is thinking about. Fire departments, first of all, encryption, unless something's changed, encryption cuts down how far you can transmit. Unless something's changed, that's always been my base of knowledge. Fire departments don't need encryption. It costs more money, and quite frankly, from what I know, it degrades the communication. Tom, you got any follow up on that?
It does a little bit. They're getting better all the time, and a lot of the they have what's called bit error rates, where the digital transmissions, they lose certain amounts of information, and so it becomes unintelligible, especially with weak signals. That's getting better all the time, though. So these digital systems and some of them can easily be encrypted are getting better all the time. But it's amazing how many police departments have just decided to leave this stuff encrypted all the time, and you can't listen to them at all. The cell phone systems are encrypted like that. You can't really tune into those unless you have the special equipment that allows you to do so.
Ken, thank you for your call. Tom, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Tom, I'll see you tomorrow morning.
Okay, John, I'll be there. Thank you.
Okay, we got a top of the hour break. We'll be right back. Take care. All right, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. J.R. Moore here, our second hour on Friday, the 2nd of March. The prepper tip of the day, I want to encourage all of you to check your battery stocks. Make sure you've got as many batteries as you need. You check expiration dates if they have expiration dates. Check the condition of the battery. Make sure they're all charged up if they are the rechargeable kind. If they're not, no longer have the power you need to dispose of them properly. And of course, anything that takes a battery, any piece of equipment that takes a battery, when you put it in storage, make sure the batteries are removed. That will help prevent, obviously it will prevent any damage from leaking batteries, which can damage or destroy a piece of equipment. That's your prepper tip of the day. This second hour, my friend Dr. Myers is on vacation. I spoke to him earlier this morning. I encourage him to have fun and be back next week, tanned, rested, and ready. So we'll have open lines this hour. I'm going to start out talking about the Second Amendment, a matter near and dear to my heart. I have here in front of me the website for Gun Owners of America. The website is gunowners.org. Gunowners.org. Some of these Congress critters are lacking in memory. If they weren't there in 1994, they may not remember because they weren't there. They may have been too young or doing something else. The November elections in 1994, we had the largest turnover of Democratic seats in the House and Senate becoming Republican seats in the House and Senate in more than a century. More than a century. The largest single turnover in 1 year of Democratic seats becoming Republican seats in more than a century. Due to the passage by the United States Congress of the high-capacity magazine ban and the alleged assault weapons ban, which didn't ban anything, by the way. What it stopped the manufacture and sale of new rifles that had certain features on them, such as bayonet lugs. And as we all know, the Crips and the Bloods and street gangs in Los Angeles are well known for their bayonet attacks on each other, their bayonet charges, pistol grips, things like that. And of course, the magazines, there was a prohibition on the manufacture of new high-capacity magazines to be sold to the public, while all the existing stocks, and once this bill passed, there was a date by which they had to stop manufacturing them. The magazine manufacturers went into high gear, running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to manufacture as many 20 and 30 round magazines as they could prior to the date of the law going into effect, which of course were all sold. After that date, the rifles that had pistol grips and bayonet lugs, other features, continued to be bought and sold, all during the ban. The high-capacity magazines, or the 20 and 30 round and even larger magazines, continued to be bought and sold, all during the ban. I find it kind of ironic that the mainstream media inaccurately, wrongly, gives credit to a decrease in murders committed with assault rifles during the alleged ban, which they were almost non-existent to begin with. I believe less than 2% of murders before, during, and after the assault weapons ban were committed with rifles of any kind, let alone assault rifles. I recall beginning in the spring of 1994, we in the gun culture, we became aware of this legislation being introduced. It was very alarming at the time. By June of 1994, it became clear that there was a chance of passage of the assault weapons ban and high-capacity magazine ban. I was part of working with 2 or 3 different groups of men and women involved in Second Amendment issues, patriot issues, and so forth, constitutional issues. And all these groups, and this was nationwide, not just the groups I was working with, but all 50 states, men and women all over the country, were very alarmed about what was going on. Of course, we need to put it in context. We need to put all this in context. We had the spring of 1994. We had I hope I get these dates right, but I'm going purely from memory here. We had the attack on the Branch Davidian Church in 1994, in the spring of 1994. I believe that's when that happened. And I believe the attack on Randy Weaver's family was the summer of 93, if I got that right. I hope I got that right. I never met Randy personally. I've talked to him on the telephone. Great guy. We never really had a chance to compare notes and find out how many mutual acquaintances we have, but no doubt, because we both served in special forces, no doubt we know some of the same people. That's the special forces community is relatively small. Those 2 events, the attack on Randy Weaver's family, who had committed no crime, by the way, the attack on the innocent men and women and children at the Branch Davidian Church near Waco, Texas, and finally the introduction of the assault weapons ban and high-capacity magazine ban. All these things combined to greatly disturb and alarm men and women who understood the Constitution, understood the proper role of government, understood the history of what happens when firearms are taken away from the general population. I recall reading an article in the New York Times. It may have been the Wall Street Journal, but I believe the New York Times that spring. It would have been around May or June, about a group in Florida starting a citizens militia. And it occurred to me at the time reading that that's what needs to happen. That's exactly what needs to happen. We need to have citizen militias forming all over this country as a countermeasure to out-of-control federal government. Absolutely out of control. And I wasn't the only one that felt that way. There were literally hundreds of groups of men and women all over the country contemplating the viability, contemplating the need, contemplating whether they could or should form a citizens militias. And during that summer of 1994, I was part of three different discussion groups of men and women who were pondering that very thing. And as it turned out, one of those groups did form a militia. I ended up becoming the elected commander of that group of men and women. It was both an honor and a tremendous responsibility, a burdensome responsibility. Same thing happened all over the country, both public and private militias. Now, the public militias were heavily infiltrated by agents of the federal government, including the one that I was elected to be in charge of. And I expected that would happen. That was my expectation. And we found out pretty quickly who they were without telling them. It would be pointless to tell them or reveal their identity because they would just be replaced. So we just kept track of who they were and treated them as far as they were concerned. They were treated as any other militia member. In addition, ours was a public militia. We would set up tables at gun shows to promote our militia and hand out business cards and information and so forth. I would have, during those events, those gun shows, I would have men and women, usually men, approach me at the table and tell me privately that they have a private militia of 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 men and women in their private militia. And they would wish me well, and I would wish them well. Now here we are 24 years later, in 2018. The public militias still exist. That's changed dramatically. I'll talk about that in a moment. The private militias, they still exist. And they've done good work all over the country. Really have. I know the militia that I was part of, we conducted a search and rescue for some duck hunters who were lost in the Missouri River. I believe it was the Missouri, may have been the Mississippi. It was near the confluence of the two rivers. We helped evacuate people's personal possessions and furniture from flooding in St. Louis County. Ironically, one of the families we evacuated was related to the gentleman in charge of the St. Louis FBI office, the special agent in charge. And we all thought that was rather ironic, but we treated his family. I think they were cousins, but we treated his family the same as all the rest and helped evacuate their personal property and furniture so it wouldn't be damaged by the flooding there in Valley Park, Missouri. 24 years ago, that's a generation. Things have changed a lot. We've been in continuous war since 2001, continuous nonstop war. The National Guard and the Air Guard and the Marine Reserves have all been activated. The National Guards in these states and the Air Guard, they find themselves with worn-out equipment or no equipment. They found themselves with their service members in the National Guard and the Air Guard are used up and worn out and leaving. These governors have found that frequently what they used to rely on to help out in the case of floods and forest fires and earthquakes and tornadoes and so forth, the National Guard simply isn't there in the way they used to be, because these continuous wars have used them up, wore them out. So many of the 50 states, I don't know how many, I know Missouri is one, many of the 50 states have reconstituted their state militias. These governors need a group of men and women who are trained and equipped to respond to floods, earthquakes, tornadoes, fires, whatever it might be. A group of men and women who are trained and equipped that the federal government can't get their hands on. That's where the state militias come in. So back in 1994, there was no state militia. We had the National Guard, which can and is and has been brought under control of the federal government and activated, taken away from the state government. And we didn't have militias that the governor had any direct command and control over. Now, the militia that I was running here in St. Louis, I was elected colonel in charge of this militia. Our mission statement said that we would accept any constitutional order from any elected official. It could be the county sheriff, a mayor, or the governor would be the chain of command, basically. The county sheriff, the mayor of a community, or a governor. And I know when we did our search and rescue for the lost duck hunters in the river, the county sheriff showed up and he interviewed our people. He looked over our equipment and our operation, and he was impressed. And he told our officer in charge at the scene, gentlemen, I will recommend you to any of my other sheriffs, and if something else comes up like this, I would call you in a heartbeat, because my people responded more quickly than the highway patrol. We had I got a call at 9 o'clock in the evening. I was doing a radio show in St. Louis from a family member of one of the lost duck hunters. By midnight, I had people on site setting up a GP medium tent, having a black water diver ready to get into the water, with communications set up, a way to prepare food, shelter for the family members who were on site, and so forth. All that in 3 hours. Faster than the Missouri Highway Patrol search and rescue water patrol people could get out there. So I was very pleased and happy to be part of a group that could outperform the Missouri Highway Patrol search and rescue water patrol people. That was impressive to myself. It was impressive to the local county sheriff, and I know for a fact that word got back to the highest levels of Jefferson City very quickly that the Missouri militia was on the scene performing search and rescue faster, more efficiently than the state government. That was very gratifying. We had a tragic outcome to that search and rescue. It turned out the duck hunters did in fact drown, and that's simply the way it was. But blackwater diving, I got my scuba certification in the summer of 1972. Blackwater diving is another whole skill separate from normal diving. You're either in water that's so murky you can't see your hand in front of your face, or it's nightfall and basically the same conditions without artificial lighting to give some illumination. It's a very hazardous thing that most divers want nothing to do with. But we had a guy in our group who was a blackwater diver, and we had good support for him, and we went ahead and did that. Where does that put us now in 2018? I don't know where this anti-gun legislation is going to go. I'm not as alarmed and as upset as I was in 1994. We have entirely different paradigm now, entirely different political conditions than we had in 1994. My belief at the moment, subject to change, is that Donald Trump will propose and support legislation that will cause no permanent harm to the gun culture or to gun owners, while at the same time giving some hope to men and women who are acting out of ignorance and fear right now when it comes to firearms legislation. We got a break. Call number is 800-313-9443. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. It's taken 3 years before I could offer the inter-shelter domes for sale. During those 3 years, several different governments and militaries were taking all their production. The inter-shelter dome homes may be just what you've been looking for to provide affordable, energy-efficient, permanent, and attractive housing. These dome homes are prefabricated units that can be assembled in a few hours by 2 men with a ladder and simple hand tools. Check out the photos of these dome homes built in the Arctic, on tropical beaches, in suburban areas, and in forests. All the details, many photographs, and the pricing of the dome homes are listed on the left-hand side of my homepage at thelibertyman.com. I think you'll find these homes are not only attractive, but they're energy efficient, and a bonus. You can disassemble them and reassemble them as many times as you feel you need to. Pretty great, huh? Something that's very, very unique. Check them out at my website at thelibertyman.com. We're back. J.R. Moore here on Friday, the second day of March. I really don't believe at the federal level there is any snowball's chance in hell of a duplication of what happened in 1994 with the assault weapons ban, high-capacity magazine ban getting passed in Congress. I really don't. Now, at the state level, yes, I do see that. Various states, especially places like California, New York, New Jersey, other states. Those states, if it was to take place, well, maybe it's time to leave the state. I know in the state of Illinois, they've got some very strong anti-gun legislation pending in the state house in Springfield, Illinois. It's going to provide, if they do pass that legislation, it'll provide more, and we talked about this earlier this week, it'll provide more incentive for people to leave the state of Illinois. The corrupt Democratic administrations in the state house in Illinois have basically bankrupted the state, promising pensions that can't possibly be serviced. The debt created by these pensions can't possibly be serviced, bankrupting the state treasury and causing taxes to go ever higher. Since I live right across the river from Illinois, I get to hear the TV ads when I'm visiting somebody. I don't have TV myself, but the Illinois political ads where people are criticizing this candidate or that candidate for raising taxes. Well, they have no choice. They have no choice. They have to raise taxes because the debt just keeps piling up. And unlike the federal government, state governments cannot run a deficit. They can't do that. There's no way to do that. It can't be done. I don't believe there'll be anti-gun legislation of any consequence passed at the federal level. Raising the age to 21, well, come on. Mr. Cruz, the 19-year-old Mr. Cruz, if he was 21 instead of 19, the same circumstances would have existed in terms of his eligibility to buy a firearm. If you're crazy at 18 or 19, you're probably still going to be crazy at 21. What would be different? What would be different? 17-year-olds can enlist in the U.S. Marine Corps. I don't believe the Marine Corps takes children. You have to have your parents' permission, of course. But with the exception of purchase of alcohol in some jurisdictions, 18-year-olds nationwide are considered adults, able to vote, to get married, to buy and sell real estate, to join any branch of the military. 18-year-olds are an adult. If you can drive a Corvette sports car capable of going not quite 200 miles an hour as an 18-year-old, that's a lot of responsibility. You can certainly cause a lot of damage to innocent human beings driving a good-sized truck into a crowd, can't you? Now, I mentioned this earlier in the week, maybe last week. Chasing technology is what they're attempting to do by these restrictions on firearms, high-capacity magazines. That's chasing technology. And if you're ignorant of technology, and it's an emotional charged matter, such as this Florida shooting, that makes sense to you if you're ignorant of technology and you have these out-of-control emotions over innocent men, women, and children being shot to death in a high school in Florida. It makes sense to you. However, if you understand technology and you're not emotionally involved, then it makes no sense whatsoever. And that's the tightrope that people like President Trump are walking. They know the emotions are running high nationwide because of the shooting in Florida. As well they should be. It's a very emotional thing. It's a tragic, tragic event. 17 innocent men, women, and children being murdered in this high school in Florida. Very tragic, and I don't recall how many wounded, but a comparable amount wounded. It's not wise to be making major decisions when you have these kinds of emotions running high. Here's our break. Call number is 800-313-9443. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. We're continuing our energy cleaner promotion, which began August of 2016. In this promotion, you get to buy an energy cleaner, $70 off retail, and a mattress pad, 10% off retail. $200 of the purchase price of the energy cleaner goes to Republic Broadcasting. This is a great way to help get energy cleaners out to people who need them and have some financial issues to deal with. And, of course, a great way to support Republic Broadcasting. Here's what you do. Send in a postcard. My address is John Moore, P.O. Box 201, Davidsville, Missouri. Okay, now I'm on air, right? Okay. We have fun doing live radio. My website is thelibertyman.com. That's thelibertyman.com. We did some organizing at my website to consolidate all the information about abrupt climate change into one place, so you don't have to go searching all over my website to find those different bits of information. So it starts out here on the left side, just to the left of the banner for the Hear the Watchman conference, which, by the way, if you're going there, check out that banner to get the promotion code to save $20 on the ticket, on the admission price. And if you can't go there in person, 20% off the live stream price. So just to the left of that, it says abrupt climate change information in red letters. And scrolling down, we've got the article paid for with your tax dollars, a research paper entitled Abrupt Climate Change Scenario and Its Implication for U.S. National Security. Then we have an article titled A Worst Case Scenario. Then my article titled The Gulf Stream Has Stopped, only 4 pages. Then we've got 2 radio interviews, myself and Dr. Bill Deagle interviewing Dr. Luigiani Zangari back in July of 2010. Dr. Zangari is a PhD scientist living and working in Italy on nothing but the Gulf Stream. Last public interview he granted that we're aware of, he got the memo afterwards that if he wanted to see his children graduate from high school, keep his mouth shut. So he didn't give any more public interviews about the Gulf Stream having stopped. Then we have the current U.S. Navy map, which has changed every 24 hours. Looks like we need to recover. I know one of my listeners sent a version of that map before June of 2010 showing the Gulf Stream working. We need to get that back up. The next article is it says related question mark. This is my letter and a response from an entomologist in the United Kingdom about the disappearance of insects. Very, very important article, which may or may not be related to the topic. The EMP Commission on the Executive Report 2008, that's not necessarily related to violent climate change. And last but not least, all these images, this is where you listeners come in, all these images recovered beginning last year, actually going back several years before that with the movie show, The Vatican, The Godfather, with a scene in the Vatican, 1972. And then all these TV shows and movies and a magazine article and a poster from 2016, and now the first one from 2017, soon to be another one posted there. And that's, if you find one yourself, an image of a continent with new coastlines and a movie or a TV show, get that screen capture to me. As a thank you, you get your choice of any of my 5 DVDs. I just shipped one out for the most recent one. It's not posted yet. We hope to have that posted hopefully by the end of the day, Monday. Of course, also my website at thelibertyman.com, you'll find the energy cleaner for sale. The energy cleaner is a healing device. If you have joint pain, arthritis pain, back pain, the energy cleaner will most likely help. Not getting a great night's sleep, it will probably help. Only $285, shipping included to American zip codes. 18 years ago, these were $3,000 a piece, by the way, and people were lining up to buy them. They couldn't keep up with the demand. $285 shipping included. Keep in mind, I offer a 90-day money-back guarantee. You need to check out the factory-made fitted mattress pads that go with the energy cleaner. Twin size, full queen king, California king, the handy travel size. It's a great combination. Many people these days are buying one for their bed and the travel size for when they're on a road trip in their motor vehicle, or to put it on their recliner so they can read a book or watch a movie and get that signal going into their body. I do take PayPal, MasterCard, Visa. PayPal, of course, is the most secure way to make any payment online. Really handy. I use PayPal all the time. And I have a toll-free order line that you can call, place your order. That's 800-592-9543. I say again, 800-592-9543. If you understand history, you don't have to be a history scholar. If you understand history, you will come to understand that tyrannical governments disarm their people before they kick in the full level of tyranny that they want to kick in, such as Pol Pot in Cambodia, for example, or famously Adolf Hitler in the Third Reich, Stalin in Russia. When the Bolsheviks, by the way, the word Bolshevik means majority. There was never more than 3% of the Russians were communists, never more than 3%. But it's very clever. You have to give them credit where credit's due. They call themselves the Bolsheviks, the majority. When the Bolsheviks took over Moscow in 1917, 1918 time period, they put out an announcement that all the veterans should come down there to register themselves and their rifles, veterans from decades in the past. Well, they went down to register themselves and their rifles, and they were all arrested and executed, especially the officers. They were deathly afraid of the officers becoming a cadre to oppose the communists once they took over. So they made sure that couldn't happen. Same thing in Ukraine when the communists took over Ukraine. In the 1930s, it became a place where many of these farmers were arrested and taken off to Siberia, never to be seen again. They were all disarmed first. China, well, the communists took over there. The ones who could escaped to Taiwan. The ones left behind, 50 million Chinese were murdered by their own government. They were all disarmed first. You don't have to be a history scholar to know these things. It's a very dark and dismal part of human history of what happens when a population is disarmed. In Turkey, we had the Armenians disarmed, the Christian Armenians disarmed, and a genocide there. The Muslims were attempting to murder all the Christians, the Christian Armenians. In fact, there was what shocked me, anything that the United Nations does that is good always shocks and surprises me. It's been about 3 or 4 years ago that there was a resolution passed in the United Nations condemning basically what happened in 1917, 1918 in Turkey with the genocide of the Armenian Christians. The Turkish government loudly protested, basically saying, we don't like it, but they couldn't deny it happened. Or maybe they did attempt to deny it happened, but it's a historical fact that's extremely well documented that millions of Armenians, Christians, were murdered by the Muslims in the period 1917, 1918 in Turkey. So it's very critical that we stand up for our Second Amendment rights. The Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution is not optional. It is critical to the other 9 of the first 10 amendments. It's the teeth of the Constitution. It's what keeps our government honest, in my opinion. These socialist governments, such as California, for example, they're deathly afraid that the people that they want to control and confiscate their wealth will figure it out and rise up in an armed rebellion. They're definitely afraid of that. They don't pass these laws to control criminals. If laws restricting the access to firearms would have any impact on criminals, then the same laws would have us have a drug-free nirvana here, wouldn't it? People dying daily from consumption of illegal drugs is off the charts crazy. It's worse than World War II. The numbers of people that are dying, men, women, and children, dying from opioids, as they're called. It's worse than, we're losing, what's the number, 60,000 per year to opioids alone, most of which are illegal, majority of them. They may be prescription items that somebody at one time got legally and were sold or stolen. Doesn't matter. A friend of mine, he's a Jewish heritage. He went back to his Jewish roots as a mature adult, Air Force veteran. 1994, he didn't own any guns. And I was working with him. We were friends, and he, a successful businessman, had 8 or 10 employees in his business that he owned. And just because the government was saying we're going to ban certain firearms, he decided that he better go out and buy some. Being Jewish, he was on a first-name basis with men and women who had survived the concentration camps in Europe. And I recall living in a Jewish community myself when I was in junior high school. The term that was heard occasionally, for every Jew, a 22. The concept being that every Jewish man, woman, and teenager should be armed with at least a 22 caliber rifle, minimum. So he went out and bought himself a 1911 and an AK-47. It was kind of funny. Every time I get together with him, which may be 2 or 3 years apart, he would say, "John, show me again how to take that 1911 apart." So I'd show him, and next time we got together in a couple of years, he'd have me show him again. We got a caller on hold here. We got Rick in Missouri. Good morning, Rick.
Proving once again that skills are perishable. I wanted to mention something with respect to what you've been talking about. I'm sorry, I'm near the chickens. My wife caught me the other day taking off my vests and jackets and everything after church, and realized that I was and had been carrying a 1911 in a shoulder holster to church. I thought I was going to get a good tongue lashing, but I got nothing. She just looked at me and walked away. And then this morning, more interestingly, while she was getting ready to go to school, now she's a old Catholic school teacher. She's been teaching for more than 40 years. She launched into a tirade about the Second Amendment, telling me, and I don't know where she got this, that the Second Amendment had nothing to do with hunting, and that it was to control an out-of-control government. And had I not been seated, had I not been seated, I would have fallen down. I was not expecting that. I learned something very, very interesting. John, I didn't mean to interrupt. What were you going to do?
No, I'm just saying, I'll buy your wife a piece of pie. Congratulate her. I mean, it's wonderful.
She's going to have some coffee to choke that down. All right. Yeah, that's great. Well, I don't know. She caught me with that. I mean, I knew she was clever, but I didn't know how much of this stuff she was really, people hear things, but they don't always adopt them as a philosophy, and this is kind of weird. But Tuesday night, I got a phone call, semi-disturbing phone call from one of the neighbors. For those of you who don't know, I live semi-rural in a neighborhood where there were only 37 homes, and there's one way in and one way out. There was an old pickup truck that had pulled past my house, let's say about 100 yards down the road, and kind of nosed into the woods and stopped. It had temporary tags, which expired that day, and a camper shell, which was wide open and nobody there. So one of my neighbors called and said, "Do you have any idea what this is?" And I said, "No. Furthermore, it's out of my sight." So I came out, and sure enough, there it was. So within minutes, 3 ex-military, well, myself and 2 other ex-military people, which this is what I'm going to say. We're in a neighborhood. You would think that that we would have at least some loose affiliation or something, but we don't. 3 military guys with weapons descended on this empty truck in 60 seconds, which I was stunned. I thought I was going to be out there alone. And so we made a report to the sheriff's department about this, and, not knowing what this was. Went back in. Within minutes, I got another phone call from another neighbor. We all came back out again. And right then and there, 3 very frightened 30-year-olds came walking out of the woods, 2 with fishing poles and 1 with an atlatl. And what they had done is they had parked in my neighborhood and walked about a mile through the farm fields to get to a lake, so that they didn't want to pull up out on the highway and come into the front where they'd have been seen. So there we were, standing there with strobe lights and weapons, and they were armed with fishing poles. And what I'm going to say about this is this. We never had an arrangement here in this neighborhood, although it appears that we can maybe now perhaps have a conversation about that. This is probably a good starting point. I kind of like what I saw.
It is. I agree. That's great, and it should begin as a social event where the wives are invited to make it as non-threatening as possible, with little, if any, discussion about the nuts and bolts of how to put together a neighborhood watch, which is what you need to be doing out there, Rick, is put together a neighborhood watch. And it needs to be family-friendly and non-threatening.
Sure.
Okay?
Right.
And I'll be glad to talk to you privately. I'll be glad to talk to you privately about how to proceed.
Yeah, I would enjoy that. All right, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Good show today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rick. Our next caller, we have a break coming up, is John in Tennessee. Good morning, John.
Good morning, John. You know, I appreciate what you do. You end your broadcast every day. Never, ever give up your guns. I agree completely. But I think what we're seeing happening, John, and especially with this deal in Florida, is that the sheriff is calling for an expansion of the Baker bill, allowing the police to have more leniency to basically haul anyone in that they think is off the hook or out of the norm for psychological evaluation.
Let's talk about that. We got a few minutes after the break, John. We'll talk about that for a few minutes and wrap up the show. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. John, restate your concern, please, sir, so we can move forward on that.
My concern about Sheriff, he struggles with God Israel and wanting to expand the Baker Act, basically to open it up, to give them more leeway to determine who needs a psychological evaluation. A couple questions come to mind. First of all, it's a slippery slope, because who determines who's going to do the testing, who's going to evaluate criteria? It's almost, John, like they're not worried about the Second Amendment. They're going to deem you unstable. For a Christian to think that he talks to God may be acceptable to them, but to believe that God talks back may deem you as crazy. The old song in the garden where it says, he walks with me and talks with me and tells me I am his own. For someone that doesn't believe in God or hates God, that's crazy talk, John. So basically, we need to be very careful. Then we've got President Trump yesterday talking about he would rather take the guns and worry about due process at a later time. Are you kidding me? President Trump, are you kidding me?
Well, he's making the mistake that many... Right. I don't, a lot of these statements, I don't know how much or if he thinks much about them before he makes them. But I'm pretty sure, John, that all 50 states have protocols in place to take a person into custody and to be evaluated if they have a possible psychological.
With due cause. But Sheriff Israel is saying that he wants a nationwide expansion to where you don't have to show due cause or just cause or reasonable suspicion. He just wants it to be that if the police officer or the sheriff or the law enforcement hears you say something that goes against their party line, that they can haul you in. And it doesn't matter if you have guns legally or not, they can take them. And then,
right. Well, it's not.
Mr. Trump.
Well, Sheriff Israel doesn't set national policy. Sheriff Israel.
No, but he's working to do it, John. And when you've got Donald Trump in office as the president saying, "Take the guns and worry about due process later," he's a smart man. He may not have realized that people would catch it, but he knew what he was saying. It's so dangerous,
we shall
man.
See.
And if we're not careful,
we shall see.
If we're not careful, they're going to go around the Second Amendment.
Well,
we need to be standing up and shouting.
we need to be paying attention. We need to be on the alert. And a way to do this, to have your voice heard, is to become part of a much larger group, which would be Gun Owners of America, and of course the National Rifle Association. But Gun Owners of America is the real bulldogs when it comes to standing up for our Second Amendment rights there, John.
And I believe the NRA has controlled that position. So with that, I'll let you go. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. The NRA's made massive mistakes in the past when it comes to firearms legislation. Massive mistakes. Well, that's it for the day. It's it for the week. Get your medical supplies, your energy, cleaner, your essential oils now while you can. Your firearms and ammunition. Never, ever give up your gun. Seriously, never, ever give up your guns. Have a fun, safe, productive day and weekend. And God bless America.